Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day, good afternoon, good morning, whatever. I've just said that already. This is the Squared Circle. Andy Evans here, joined as always by Sam Mellows, the podfather of professional wrestling. Sam, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Bit tired, but it's because I've been using my week off to paint. So if I don't see a paintbrush after the day, I'll be happy.
Well, I've got plenty of work you can come and do over here if you want. If you want to come and paint or, strip walls, do some plastering, whatever. I've got plenty of stuff.
The last 7 months has worn me out to the point where I think I'm going to save up and get professionals in because, by golly, no more.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I don't do anything unless I can help it. I fell off a ladder the other day, though. Funnily enough. Right. First of all, it's apology time. For those of you who are wondering, we've not been on air for 2 weeks. Um, Various different reasons happen for that. Now, the I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it effectively comes down to workload for both Sam and myself, and ill health. So we were meant to be doing Legacy on Bray Wyatt 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, my work went completely mental, so we couldn't make that show. And again, I apologize. We were hoping to have done it later in the week, but it didn't happen. And last week, we were meant to record. Now, we had some technical issues because Sam's internet went down. I work for a fiber company, and even I couldn't fix it. So Sam's internet went down. Hopefully, that is now fixed by the internet provider. It's a bit dodgy, and I also came down with a chest infection, so I could barely talk, and it was my week off, which was annoying. So yeah, I couldn't really speak. If I could speak, I was coughing. So we made the call not to do a show last week, but we are back in a reduced format because I'm still not 100%, so my voice can go at any moment. So you're just gonna have to bear with us, and Sam's going to pick up. So that's the apology, but we are back, and hopefully normal service will resume over the next few weeks, right here on TSC. What do we got coming up this week? Well, we're going different. We're going unique, because we're not going to do the news. We're not going to do wrestling history. We're not going to do challenge. We haven't got a pay-per-view to preview because we're not doing Super Showdown or whatever it's called on Saturday because I forgot about it. We're going to talk. I'm being honest, all school.
It wasn't until I saw something on. I was flicking through the old Instagram, and it came up about Logan Paul's match against Rey Mysterio, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's tomorrow." That's
And
a little.
there's just no
I don't.
interest.
We've gone about
No.
it on the show before. When it goes over to their listeners who are from that part of the world, love you, keep listening. But when you go over there, that's only going for there for one reason, and I'm not going political today, but I don't
Please
like
don't.
it. So yeah, but
Okay.
can I just put a little thing back on the whole factor of us being off? We've been off, but we're back, and we're back to stay, and we're going to do absolute killer shows coming up. Trust me. But remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X at TSC Wrestling Pod, and you can find us on Spotify and on YouTube at TSC Wrestling Pod. And if you're on Twitter, well, X, should I say, use the hashtag TSC Pod. Don't forget to follow us. Leave us comments, leave us reviews. You're absolute legends. Let's go on with the show.
Okay, there we go. I forgot socials. Or you can email us the old-fashioned way, studio@squarecirclepodcast.com. All right, so this week we are going to have one talking point, and that is this. It's all about TNA. Now, a couple of weeks ago at Bound for Glory, they made the announcement that TNA Wrestling was coming back as of the 1st of January. Impact was disappearing, and it was going to be rebranded to what it originally was at TNA. So my question to you is it the right move for Impact / TNA? Now, the Coventry tour, the UK tour happened last week. Unfortunately, because of illness, we couldn't make it. I couldn't drive, and that was heartbreaking because we were both desperate to go, but health comes first. From what I've seen of those tour shows, so they were incredible. The crowd was chanting TNA already, and there's plans for them to come back in 2024 already, as well as the show that's being advertised above my head, all in London. Tickets on sale December 1st. Ticketmaster.co.uk/AEW Wembley 2024 when you want to go there. Do you think rebranding Impact to TNA is a good move, or can lightning strike twice? Is it too far gone?
So I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to work because I think I've said it on a previous show before, and I've said it on other times as well, on other podcasts and other talking points. I've always called it TNA, and a lot of people who are TNA fans have called it TNA because even though it's been branded as Impact, everyone's known it to be TNA. Everyone's talked it about being TNA. It's total non-stop action, and I think it is the most truest to its name possible. It's total non-stop action. Even when you go back to the height of the COVID era, when it was lockdown, when it was barely anyone in that studio, it was still total non-stop action. Amazing. I personally think it's not. I almost feel it's not a rebrand. I feel like it's just right. Forget that bit that Bischoff and Hogan did. We're going to bring it back to our bloodline.
Yep.
Going to bring it back to our base, and that's what it is. And my two things I really hope, and I'm sure we're going to talk about more about this as well. But I hope they bring back bits of the old school, but not too much of it. Like I'd love to see the six-sided ring, but I would be not bothered if it didn't come back. If that makes sense.
Right, so let's just interject because there's a couple of things that you've said there that I want to pick up. So I'm really going to be the devil's advocate today because that's the mood I'm in. The six-sided ring has been confirmed it's not coming back. So Scott D'Amore has confirmed that. He confirmed that in an interview. But the reasons for why he's confirmed it are good because it was actually more damaging to the talent's health to be in a six-sided ring than it was to be in a squared circle. And to be honest, I think I was never the biggest fan of the six-sided ring. I thought it was a novelty, right?
Mhm.
But professional wrestling is a four-sided squared circle. That's what it is. You know,
Hence, it's called the square
hence
circle.
hence called the squared circle. Hence how we got our name. But it's it's not a six-sided ring. It's not an octagon. It's not UFC. It's not a hexagon. You don't compete in the hexagon squared circle. You compete in the squared circle. And I get it, and I get them for trying something different back in the day, and it did do some killer matches. Some of the X Division really, you know, took advantage of those six sides and being able to fly off and do all the high flying Jeff Hardy flippity flips, hoppity hops, and swervy swervies and sidey wimies. But I think in today's culture, in today's professional wrestling, it doesn't have a place. So I'm not sorry that the six sided ring is not coming back. My other thing is a bit of a pun. You said during lockdown, what a shame they didn't run Impact Lockdown on pay per view.
I only took that joke from Josh Alexander because he made that joke many times.
Yeah, shame they didn't run the pay per view.
People goes, how do we not do that? How do we not, in our time of lockdown, do we not go,
Yeah.
oh, let's do lethal lockdown, but you don't even need to worry about a cage. It's just lethal everywhere.
Yeah,
I'm a
Jeff
of lethal lockdown. But
Jarrett was far ahead of his times when he came up with the lockdown pay per view in 2005. But and also
yeah.
the big catalyst point that I want to not fight you on, but I want to challenge you on
Um,
is it's been 13 years now since they rebranded to Impact Wrestling. Your diehard Impact fans will know it as TNA. We know it as TNA. But the fans that have come on over the last 13 years are not.
I'm going to be devil's advocate with that. This is going to be a great show for this. But
It's going to be interesting.
It's why we're calling it a talking point. There is, I get what you mean. Yeah, if you come into it just since it's been Impact. However, the problem is with that is they've always talked about TNA. They've always shown things about TNA. It's always been known as TNA Impact or Impact TNA. Total non-stop action. Like at points, it's literally there's been like reference to it all the time. The fact that this person was a TNA world champion, not the Impact world champion. When they talked about Alex Shelley, talked about Chris Sabin, talked about Frankie Kazarian, Eddie Edwards, all these different wrestlers who are of the old days, but who are there now, they have talked about it. So I don't think I would love to actually talk to someone from each year who's become a fan of each year and go, okay, and put them on a lie detector test and find out from them, do they know what TNA is and do they know what Impact is? Because my thinking is, personally, that it's because I'm an old school TNA fan, back to its first pay per view, or to the fact of loving it now because it is just. I completely agree with what loads of the wrestlers are saying. AEW, WWE, they are big, they are massive corporations, blah blah blah. They can do all these big show tours like All in London. However, TNA is the proving ground, and me and you have said this on private
Mm.
messaging.
Hmm.
Is the growing ground, the proving ground. It's a place where if someone wants to go, like I truly believe that when we have some of these people who've been released recently by the WWE, when they finally have their 90 day non-complete clause finish, I think it would do them the world of good. Like people like Elias, people like I think I don't pronounce their name right, but Aaliyah, they would
Alicia.
do they would do amazing, and even Dana Brooke go to TNA because it will build them. Look at people like Matt Cardona, um, Moose, like all these different wrestlers. They are people who have gone there. Even look at LA Knight, who was when who was obviously in um, F, FCW, which was obviously the early days of NXT. Then he was in NXT as I think it was like Sean Ricker or something like that. I think by his real name. Then and he's only there for like maybe a month, 2 months. Then he left. He then went and became Eli Drake over on TNA or Impact, shall I say, because it was at Impact time. He made himself to who he is now because he went from there to NWA, which then made him go, "Oh, actually, we need this guy on our roster. Look at him now. He's Mr. L.A. Knight.
Yeah,
Yeah."
I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all because I think you've got a valid point, and you could go case in point. Drew McIntyre did the
Yeah.
same point when Drew Galloway, left WWE and went to Impact and became, Impact World Champion and had the run. I suppose my concern is, let's be frank, I know TNA listen to the show. We're we're massive friends with TNA, and I've got nothing but love and respect for them, and I wish them all the very best because they are a great product. But can lightning strike twice? Because TNA was meant to be the alternative back in 2005 when it launched. And Jarrett said that it was the alternative. It was meant to be different to WWE. It was meant to be different to WCW. It was meant to be different to what was out there. We've now got WWE, UFC, TKO on the one side. We've got AEW, who really don't know, in my view, at the moment, who they are, what their identity is, or where they're going. Um, because of what happened yesterday with the signing of a multi-year agreement of the Nature Boy Ric Flair to All Elite Wrestling. You've got New Japan that is taking over and trying to build a US presence, and they're doing well with NJPW strong. You've got the
Amazing.
NWA that have just got a deal with the CW network to air on main
Still.
CW and all affiliate stations, and you've got TNA. So the landscape of professional wrestling now is totally different to 2005. So how can you take a company like Impact that's gone from Nashville, gone from the Impact Zone, gone from being in Orlando to going back to Toronto, running a smaller arena, had a Canadian feel, to now take its place back as the number 3 or number 4 promotion? Because that's ultimately what you want to do, right? You want them to go there. Internationally, TNA will always draw, always, because the UK crowd, the Australian crowd, the Indian crowd love TNA. But in the US, it's still got this stigma of being TNA wrestling or Impact Wrestling, whatever you want to call it. Now, they need to break that in order to get this rocket ship really moving. And I don't know how you do that because you put eyes on that product, it's actually one of the better, if not the best, wrestling product out there. It's far superior than AEW in terms of in-ring action, and
Yeah.
it's far superior than WWE in terms of in-ring action. Doesn't need the glitz and glamour, doesn't need the pyro, doesn't need the big sets. It's what's happening in the square circle. You still got to get the eyes on it though.
Yeah. And this is the thing. You've got I think you literally hit the nail on the head about the factor of it's the one that, because it's like for me, if I want to go and watch a wrestling match, and I say wrestling is the word I'm saying, a wrestling match, not a sports entertainment match, not a let's just chuck everyone into a mix match, a wrestling match. It is TNA that I'm going to go to. Has been for a long while. Hence why when we've talked about our best moments of the week, I've said Impact or
Mm,
now it's be TNA. So kind of going backwards though on what you've been saying is that where the whole lightning strikes twice sort of situation, I think it needed that rebrand to carry on because it almost needed to go right. We're going back to our roots. In the video that they had to kind of open it, that we're going to go to it, is you've got all these wrestlers around this box and it opens up. And yes, that is you could view as a bit gimmicky. And hi guys at Impact and TNA, I know you guys watch. I love that. That is brilliant because it gave that little bit of cinematicness, but also it made the point we are reopening that box that was closed when it became Impact. When you had some brother with a blue bandana around his head and some guy with silver hair stand in a ring trying to fight off Dixie Carter, that became Impact. And it became, at that point, I remember even then being really angry it became Impact. I was like, no, don't lose TNA. Because I love the fact you had the two entrances.
mm,
I don't have fear that it's not going to work. And I think with the audience, when you've got someone like the Billy Goat, Will Ospreay in the present, he, yeah, he literally is the Billy Goat because he's the goat, and his name's Will, so it's Billy. Literally,
oh
his new T-shirt says Billy Goat. It's amazing. Um,
God.
someone like that, he put a thing on Twitter about the fact of how great it's been working with them recently. And I say this what a brilliant, brilliant signing. I know he obviously hasn't signed a set deal with them and only to be with them, but these times he's been with them has been amazing. And my friend went to the TNA show up in Scotland and said that the whole show had amazing feel because it was almost like everyone was re-energized. And he wonders if it was because of TNA, because it becoming TNA again. This whole factor of they've said yes, it's not instantly right today we are TNA. It is after this point we are TNA because it gives that thing of like what's happening, what are they going to do, why are they holding it back? I love that. It's I think my personal feeling. I think lightning's going to strike twice in a good way. It is going to go, yep, we're back, and we are going to fight the others to be maybe the number two spot because that's no offense to TNA, no offense to AEW, NWA, New Japan. I don't think if WWE is ever going to be knocked off the number one because it has been so big and
I,
going so
it,
long.
it will never be knocked off the number one.
I don't think it ever will be, and I'm in a way pleased because then it gives that drive that every other company wants to be that big, wants to have 3 shows a week, have big pay per views every month. Look at AEW; they are going to have more pay per views a year. Look at TNA; they've already been doing loads of pay per views a year. Have they been singing and dancing about it? No, because they don't need to.
But in a way they do because they've been doing these events and they're doing one in January. They're doing a double header, which I think is called Snake Eyes and something else the night before, and then they got Snake Eyes the next night. It's in Las
Yeah,
Vegas. It's in Las Vegas. But you don't
right.
know. But the problem is you don't know these events are happening.
No,
So there's no major advertising for them in respect of it being on Fight or being on Impact subscribers or anything like that. And what hurts them, and this isn't their fault, and I don't want to critique them, I don't want to criticize them for the sake of criticizing them. It's being on DAZN and being a subscription model. You've in the UK anyway, you've got to pay extra to watch Impact,
mm,
right? Yeah. Back in the day when it first launched, right the way up until recently, it was on Challenge
yeah, and that's the
or it was
thing.
on
Like,
Bravo, and it was free
well,
to air.
look for a little while as well because
Yeah.
date became date. I
there's
just
obviously
like,
there's obviously a market there for it because
oh yeah,
all of the tours did extremely well, and we know that, and we know they're really popular, and there is definitely a market for TNA. For me, I'm just concerned that you always get told the analogy is, when you leave a job, right? When you leave, you never go back because you don't want to. Why would you go back in time, right? And there's part of me that sat there doing the same thing in my head. It's like, why would you go back? I get the legacy of TNA, but actually, Impact's been around longer than
Yeah.
TNA. You know, if you
Okay.
think about it, the brand's been around longer. So why would you go back? If you're going to rebrand it, come up with a new concept. I sound like a right hypocrite because I do love Impact, and I'm going to sit here most likely next year on January and celebrate the fact that TNA's back and go absolutely nuts because TNA's back, and seeing the intro and seeing the TNA lettering and the TNA logo on that promo video, I marked out. I'll admit it. I said that to you. I went, bloody hell, that was brilliant. And the way they did the video with Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian and Moose like TNA, and then the Impact, the crossover there was good. And I agree with you about bringing some of the old Impact stars back to come on, but yet they're signed with WWE and AEW. So you've lost Samoa Joe, right? You've lost AJ Styles. They're on that main rosters for WWE and AEW, right? Yeah. So that nostalgia's not going to be there. But I don't know. I just kind of think there's thing in the back of my mind going, why would you go back in history and try and reincarnate something that actually didn't have a long shelf life? Yes, I know people still call it TNA, and at the beginning it was a joke, especially in America. It was, oh look, it's TNA, yeah, uh, standing for something different in the
Yeah.
US. But
Yeah.
Impact actually has had a longer shelf life than TNA Wrestling.
Yeah. And then that's why my question is though, do you feel that what? So you're basically saying you'd rather than call it completely something else if they're going to rebrand and go back to TNA.
I'm thinking that if
Then
you're okay, so what I'm thinking is, and again, the one thing about professional wrestling, the one thing about this show and all the other shows that are out there, no opinion is right and no opinion is wrong, right? And that's key. And I have conversations with Impact PR all the time and get on really well with Impact PR, and we've got a good relationship with them, and I wouldn't jeopardize that. Sometimes new is better.
yeah.
Sometimes giving something a fresh coat of paint and coming up with a new name, or giving it a complete restart, if that's what you want to do, new year, new start, sometimes it's better than
Yeah.
going back to the well that you went to before. You still don't lose any of that history. You don't lose TNA, it's still there. You don't even lose Global Force because that's still part of TNA to some degree. And the lineage of the championship is going to stay. So when TNA comes back, it's still going to be all the Impact champions for the last 13 years are going to be on that. Brilliant. They're not resetting it. But sometimes if you're going to restart. Give yourself a clean slate and let yourself move forward. Because we're all sat here thinking, oh, it's TNA Wrestling, it's coming back. It's still going to be the Impact product. It's just going to have a different name.
Okay. Going with that, I've got two questions leading into that. And
Oh,
because
God.
I know this is what I'm loving about this show. Did you feel the same when it became from TNA to Impact? Did you feel like the factor of it was still the TNA product that is now called Impact, or did you feel like it was, hi guys, we are now Impact? Oh, this is completely different. Other
Well,
than the fact it went from a six-sided ring to back to a
no,
circle.
the funny thing was I was covering it. So
Yeah,
I was doing this show or a show, I can't remember which one we were doing. I was
it
covering
was, it was
the change. Huh? TWS.
it, because TWS, as I remember, I was
Okay.
listening in to the old chat room.
So I remember covering it. And I think at the time I actually turned around and said, well, that's a mistake because what's the show going to be called? Because the show was TNA Impact, right? And that's what you knew it as. Then they changed it to Impact Wrestling and it became Wrestling Matters. Uh, and that kind of worked. But they did a slow phase of that. They did a slow phase of getting rid of the TNA. They didn't just drop it. It wasn't just 1 week. That's it. TNA get the F out like the WWF to the WWE.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the way they did that was, I get your point. Um, but I think this is slightly different because
Yeah,
this is taking it back to what it was. This is actually now giving the company a name and then giving the TV show a name.
yeah,
It's not
and
just
that
giving the
leads
TV show a name.
And that is what going on to my second question. So we have the factor of kind of all along it's been that there hasn't been a second show for TNA or Impact, what it's called. So it's just been called that. Do you think it would have worked if the brand was TNA, but the show was still kept the name Impact? So then
That's
it
a what?
became we're
Yeah, but that
becoming our business product, our company name is TNA.
yeah.
However, this show is called Impact, and we're maybe down the line have another show down the line called something else.
Well, yeah, of
Sim-
course, because it wouldn't that what different is that model to All Elite with Rampage, Dynamite, and Collision, or
Meaning, yeah,
WWE with Raw, SmackDown, and NXT? So that's a bit of a mute argument because yeah, that model would have been the same model that any other company would have done, and you would have had the company brand like us, TSC. If we then decided to do TSC Legacy, it's still TSC. It's just the Legacy show, right? So that brand is you're right that, but they didn't do that.
no,
They
and
didn't do that.
what was always different about them was the fact that
Yeah,
their show was called was what their company was called.
yeah. Which was a unique thing for them, I think, because it's like you talk about Impact, you talk about the show, and you talk about the company.
Absolutely,
So, basic to take your argument, what they could do now is go, we're going to rebrand the show to TNA Wrestling, we're back. Because
yeah.
that's all the
Are we?
promotional material. We're back. Well, we're back every week. I don't know why someone doesn't do that.
I know. I've just got this image of like, oh, did you watch this week's show of We're Back? Like, oh
It's
no, I was
just,
watching Raw instead.
but you see, they have done other shows
Yeah, and they have,
like
and it's been
like
brilliant.
BTE, but it's
Yeah,
still Impact Wrestling BTE.
yeah.
So that's been the company name. So actually, that argument that you've just done is mute because of the fact that they've used Impact Wrestling as the company name.
Oh yeah, but that's what I'm saying is from now on, would you be only okay if they kept it as keeping the show, as in the weekly show called Impact, but the
Oh yeah,
brand company name TNA? That's what I'm meaning, or
yeah,
not?
and that's what
So
they're going to do, and that's what
yeah,
they're going to do. Um, just like Dynamite and Rampage and Collision. But again, how often do you sit there and go, "Did you watch AEW Dynamite or did you watch WWE Raw?" You don't. You go, "Did you watch Dynamite this week or did you watch Collision?" So
yeah,
you're not going to sit there and go, "Sam, did you watch TNA Impact this Thursday?" Or would you go,
yeah,
"Did you watch Impact this Thursday,
yeah.
last
And
Thursday?"
yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm thinking more from the business side of stuff as well. Like,
From the business side, giving it a brand name is recognizable, and I get that. But also, you've got to think that Impact Wrestling has become that brand name. And we are kind of going around in circles on this one.
mm,
Whatever way they do, you're going to get people like me and like you that are going to sit there and go, it's the best thing in the world for Impact to change back to TNA. And on the flip side, you're going to get people going, why?
yeah. And
Why?
okay, my next question, because I want to throw another question.
You can tell I'm not well today, can't you? Because you're just throwing everything at me but the kitchen sink. Go on.
I can throw the kitchen thing as well, but that would be a lethal lockdown. Um, no. Um, so, do you feel it would harm, or do you think it would help the product to bring legends back, but not loads, but almost like sporadically, or do you think it would hurt the company to
No, I
do
think
this?
it would hurt them.
Yeah, and that's like this down here. I just
I
wondered because the way you speaking, I was thinking, does he want old legends to come back to
no,
help?
I think the problem with that is you can go again. You can rely too much on the past, and you have to be careful then that you're not alienating the current fans with the lapsed fans. And WWE do this very well. For all the critique of WWE, they do it well, where they bring back a legend, or they'll do a tribute show, or they'll bring back a legend on a run like Trish Stratus this past year. Whether or not you thought the feud was any good or not, seeing Trish back with that pop worked. You
Yeah,
go to the flip side of that with All Elite, bringing legends back in like the Nature Boy Ric Flair on an extended deal, and you go, why? It's fanboy, and
well,
that's what that's what
it
TNA need to be careful they don't do
yeah,
is go one to the well again and start bringing back any free agents they can, and they do it quite well. In fairness, they brought Mickey James back on multiple runs, and they've worked. They've brought Bully Ray back, who is so over it's unbelievable. 5150, and he's working with the modern talent, but he's doing it in a way where he's putting the modern Impact talent, this new generation of workers, over. They did it well with Tommy Dreamer. They've done all of this, bringing back the ECW stuff back in the day. I don't think you need to do that. What
Mm.
TNA need to do now is position themselves as the wrestling company. That's what they need to do. They they're already doing it to a degree with terms of no real set, no real pyro, and small arena, like the old fashioned NXT at Full Sail. That's what they're kind of positioning themselves at where they are. I think they need to get on the road. I think
Yeah,
they need to get on the road in 2024. I think that's the only way you're going to expand your house market is to, or your bums on seats, is to get out on the road. Um, we know crowds in North America are not as good as they were 5 years ago for both of the main companies because we've seen shots of Raw and Dynamite with the empty seats, right? So we know the gates are not there. So don't run the bigger ones, run the smaller auditoriums, but give it a big time feel. It's an indie scene with um um it's an indie scene with a big pocket with big bucks. It's what you want to make it look like.
and that's the thing. Like, do you know what I was talking to my friend about this like the other day, and I was going to bring it up on the show. So we've both just watched a brilliant documentary called Wrestlers on Netflix,
Hmm.
and that proves about the whole small arenas and how even they found it difficult. I think TNA, and this is the friend I was talking to, is the one who went to the Scotland show, and they said for them the house show feel was amazing. It felt like it was old school WWE, just not in the O2 or in
But that but
Liverpool
that's
Arena. But that's what he goes. That's what TNA need to do. They need to do it where they need to go back on the road like they used to do, but not go to massive arenas because that's where, like you said, AEW has faulted because it's been proven many a time, and WWE as well. They need to stay in the mid-sized arenas or venues.
they need to be they need to be within the realm of 15 to 2,500 attendance.
Yeah,
That's what they need to be in. They don't need too big of a screen. They need a decent set. They need a ramp. They need something that would make them look professional and not like your standard indie that's charging $10 for you to go and see. But what TNA do and what TNA do well compared to the other companies, and I'm including the NWA and I'm including AEW and WWE in this, and we've said it earlier on, is they focus on in ring.
yeah,
They focus on giving a match a time. Forget the entrances. They will give the match the time to tell the story, and they've always done that. Um, and that's what they need to continue to do. And if that is going back to TNA name, which is the TNA legacy, then fine. Just don't lose who you are. Don't lose everything that you've done over the last 13 years, because some people could turn around and say that actually, by getting rid of that Impact brand, you're just throwing away 13 years of development. You're not, but why would you go back to
mm,
TNA? Because you're basically saying it's our golden era.
yeah,
It's our golden time. That's what we prefer, and you might do. And that's why I said at the beginning of this, sometimes it's better to put a line under it and refresh. Case in point, this show. Okay. So this show was Lee and myself back in 2005. He created TSC. We took it to new heights. We closed it. We finished it. Now we could have easily have come back and said, when we got back together again and said, right, we're going to reform TSC. We didn't. We launched Ministry of Slam,
yeah,
but it was the same show,
yeah,
just a different name. But we still had all of our legacy that we did before. And then when Ministry shut down for the first time, um, and I set up TWS, it was still this show.
yeah.
So you might sit there thinking, you know, fine, you've done it 3 different times. Why did you bring back TSC this time? Because TSC is my last run in wrestling podcast. This is it. Once this show comes to an end, I'm done.
Which,
But this is what I'm saying. If this show comes to an end, I'm done. I'm finished. That's me. That's me done for good. Right. Um, And this was the highlight. TWS was the second highlight. This was the highlight of what we did, of how we grew, how Lee and I grew the show from nuts to a fruiting plant, from a seed to a blossoming bloom. Um, and the challenge was to bring it back and use that legacy. So I've done exactly what Impact have done, but I had a break.
Yeah,
It wasn't. I didn't do TSC to MOS and then carried it on and then rebranded it to TWS and then rebranded it to TSC. We took a break.
yeah,
But
and that's something.
Impact haven't, and they could have easily have gone December 31st, door shut. We're going to take a month off, right? And we're going to come back with a bang. And it's going to be Slammiversary. We're going to bring Slammiversary to February, and this is what we're going to do.
I think that would harm the product. Having a month off, that gives a month to
It,
fans
it might,
watch
it,
other companies. Comes back,
you,
go,
s-
what are you going to do?
but you
What?
say that, but you
Mm,
say that because you've got 13 years of Impact Library. You've got since 2005. This month would be a chance if you're going to rebrand it. This would have been a chance to have gone back into done the top title changes in history,
mm,
or the top moments in history. The criteria of Don West and Mike Tenay. I mean, Bound for Glory. Why would you? All of the inductees to the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame.
yeah,
You're now rebranding it back to the TNA Hall of Fame.
yeah.
So you've just done a Bound for Glory where you've inducted the legends of Mike Tenay and Don West and Frankie Kazarian, not Tracy Brooks, into
I,
the Impact Hall of Fame, but
yeah.
it's now the TNA Hall of Fame.
But then that you could say that about it was the WWF Hall of Fame and then became the WWE Hall of Fame.
But that was, yeah, and I get that, but that's literally taking the F out and putting an E on. This is changing it from one company,
Yeah.
taking it back to another company. It's the same company though, isn't it? WWF and WWE are the same.
And the same with Impact and TNA. They're all the same company from the
Yeah,
bloodline. It's the
I
bloodline. But think
I
about it. The
get that.
wire has been
Yeah,
it's
the
never been cut. It's just changed its color or
yeah,
changed its.
and I do get where you're coming from, and I do get that. And this is coming across like on my part as being really negative. It's because I feel like death. But
But it's a great talking point, though. This is why we talk about it. It's because of the factor of we have our different views, and that's the great thing about like
mm,
wrestling fans. We all have our opinions, have our views, and our thoughts, and that's what makes this. It'd been so boring show. If we went, yes, we agree with everything each
yeah,
other
no, it
say.
would. It would, and you're absolutely right. But I think the disappointing thing for me about, if you want to talk about the Hall of Fame, was you induct the voices of TNA into Impact's Hall of Fame. This would have been, and then you make the announcement at the end of the pay per view of we're coming back to TNA for as of January. For me, why would you could have inducted Tracy Brooks. That's fine. You
Mm.
could have inducted Bully Ray into the Impact Hall of Fame. But
He was already in. Him and Devon were already there.
yeah, but you could induct Bully,
Oh,
like
shit.
WWE, right?
Yeah,
Or Tommy Dreamer or whoever. With Don West and Mike Tenay, that were the voices of TNA,
I get what you mean.
why hold them? Why not hold them off? And on your
Oh,
first show as TNA, doing a Hall of Fame induction special where you bring out Mike Tenay and Don West. Now I know they did it at Bound for Glory. I get it. It's the biggest pay per view of the year for them. It's their WrestleMania. I get why, but
yeah,
it's just they were TNA. You talk about if you cut TNA open, you had Mike Tenay and Don West.
yeah. Mike West.
Mike West. It's the love child of Mike and Don. But you just had Mike Tenay and Don West. They were the voices. They were the DNA. That's what Impact. That's what TNA was. And I don't know. It just felt a bit kind of pulled the rug out of their induction a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And this thing like the thing I love them being inducted. But I even felt the same as you with that. I did feel like you could have used them as not used them, but it'd have been such a beautiful touch of you're becoming TNA now. They were TNA. I know Mike TNA did do some commentary when it became Impact,
Yeah,
but it
he was the
wasn't him.
voice of TNA. I mean, you could have done it. You could have done the whole announcement of TNA coming back live on pay per view with Mike
Yeah,
Tenay in the ring.
Yeah. Oh my god. And or even him being doing the announcement.
or him doing the announcement, or him and Scott Demore doing it in the ring. I don't think it was done wrong. Don't get me wrong.
No, no, no.
I don't think it was done wrong, but I just think that there's I teared up with the Mike Tenay speech. We haven't really talked about it because we haven't been on air since Bound for Glory. I teared up with that Mike Tenay speech because it was so powerful. It was so moving. It was such a tribute to Don West, who was a great talent in his own way. Um, and then the announcement, then the promo video came at the end, and it's just like, you've wasted that. That was an opportunity for you to really kind of do TNA, kickstart it back with the first voices that you heard on TNA Wrestling on pay per view number one on Wednesday night on pay per view from Nashville was Mike Tenay.
Yeah.
So why not do that Hall of Fame induction? The first thing you see on the new TNA is the voice of TNA, the voices of TNA being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It would have been a
Or
full circle moment.
or even done it on the show that almost like midway through the show, that's when you have the Mike Tenay thing, the announcement, and then after the announcement, he does he
Yeah,
does his
yeah.
introduction thing. But we could talk about the past 10,000 times. But I like the point you made earlier on about the whole you don't go back, like you leave a job, you don't go back to it. It's a bit like the old saying that my friend said: when you break up with someone, you don't go back don't go back with them. It's like pushing toothpaste back into a tube.
It depends why you broke up with them. I'll just add
Yeah,
that.
yeah, but, yeah. Do you get what I mean? And that's but then you could say that's about TNA. Like they're getting back together again about being TNA instead of Impact. Will it be messy? Only time will tell. We may come to January and go, oh my god, what have they done? They should have stayed Impact. Or we might have gone, nice. So
I,
this
I,
is
I, I
non-stop.
genuinely, yeah, I genuinely don't think we will look back on it and go, what have they done?
Yeah,
I think at the moment it's more a case of we don't. Nobody likes change. You don't like change, and it took you a while to get used to the fact that TNA was gone and it was now Impact Wrestling. Now you've got to get used to the fact that Impact's gone and it's now TNA. And it's nobody likes change, and I think that's what it is. I mean, like, we're going to wind this up in a second because we've talked for about 40 minutes on this, but I think what is interesting is 2024's wrestling landscape is going to look very, very different to 2023. We've already talked about the fact that the NWA is now on the CW network. We know the rights deals for WBD and AEW are up for grabs. That's not been signed, sealed, and delivered yet. We know that Raw and NXT are up for grabs, and that's not been signed, sealed, and delivered yet. We know SmackDown's moving back to the USA Network because it didn't fit or meet Fox's business criteria, which is a massive slap in the face for WWE, right?
yeah,
And actually that being announced could potentially hurt negotiations for Raw and SmackDown, for Raw and NXT, because you're not hitting our business target. And
no.
now you've got TNA wrestling back. So the landscape.
And we've also got the signing war of 2024 with MJF.
Oh, that's a work he signed with AEW a long time ago. But yeah, I know
You
what
know,
you mean.
they will come in here and be like, oh, have I signed?
Yeah, but so
I thought you.
you've got a massive change in landscape
Mm,
in professional wrestling, and TNA are going to need to do something now to step it up to combat. You're not going to combat the AEWs and you're not going to combat the WWEs because, quite honestly, you don't have the money in the back pocket.
no,
You now need to go and target the NWA.
yeah,
You want to try and elevate yourself over that NWA product to make yourself the number three or the number four promotion really, because it's going to go WWE, AEW, New Japan, then it's going to be Impact slash NWA, and then underneath them will be Ring of Honor. That's pretty much the landscape that
okay.
you're looking at in 24.
One last question I asked for that because you just mentioned something about the money. Okay, say for instance, a multi-millionaire, a bit like Tony Khan situation.
Hmm.
If someone came along and went, right, I am going to be your funding. Don't
Hmm.
worry, no money is too much.
Hmm.
So, do you think it would help? It would make them, or do you think it would just, if anything, hinder them because they'd just be signing big names
It,
for the sign
it's
the money?
it's a double-edged sword. Um, and it's a really good question to ask, but it is a double-edged sword because everybody thought that with Tony Khan and his bank balance and All Elite Wrestling that it would be amazing. But what did he do? He signed pretty much any major star who came free agent
Yeah.
or any star that became released, and he's just got this roster of talent that are sat there doing nothing. So actually, when you bring some of this talent back out, you're not going to know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he's fanboyed and brought in people like CM Punk, who was a draw for 5 minutes, then had backstage controversy and got released. He's now brought in, and I say it for the third time, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Cannot believe that that's been done. Um, WWE, they don't need to worry about that because they've got the backing of TKO, or do they? Questions from Endeavor as to whether or not that will carry on. That says a lot, doesn't it? And money doesn't actually mean everything. You can bring as much talent as you want in, but if you don't have the basic fundamentals in place, if you don't have the creative, you don't have the talent, the right talent, you don't have the right booking, but you also don't have the crowd or the audience,
Yeah. And that's
it,
the
it,
thing.
it doesn't do anything.
You could, my thinking is, yeah, the only thing I would want a bigger money person kind to do is to be able to make it the most best set possible, but not big elaborate, but just all those little things because it helps with the look. Because it's a bit like if someone gave you two coins in front of you, one that's shiny and new and one that's battered, but they're both the same price, you're gonna
Yeah.
go
Well, you're going
naturally
to
your
go with the
brain,
shiny and new. Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying, like those little things for the product. I'm not saying, oh, let's bring in big bucks Barry, but let's bring in the big screen or bring in the really nice those little things because it
But,
helps to the product.
but the problem with that is once you start doing that, in terms of that, bringing the big screen, bringing the sets in, you then need to actually think about what is best for the product. Because if
Yeah,
you then do, and we've seen this, bear in mind, we saw this for over 10 years on WWE, that Raw and SmackDown looked exactly the same.
yeah.
They had the same set, they had the pay per views then went to exactly the same set, right?
So,
So every set that you do for a show or every set that you do for a pay per view, based on that logic, should be unique. There should be something different that sets it apart, even if that's like Backlash, where it did the hanging blades. You know, when they did the old Backlash pay per view, or you know,
Elimination Chamber when it had
yeah,
the
anything,
thing.
and not stupid virtual reality
I
3D
literally
holograms.
hate literally
But
hate because no one in the audience can see it. It's a bit like
yeah,
Strictly. Why do you have it? Because you can't see it.
yeah,
If you're in the audience, you wouldn't be able to see it. It's waste of time. You
but
just do it
this,
for the TV at home, and people are actually going, "No, move out of the way. I want to see
yeah.
the come
So
down building."
I kind of think that, yeah, production is important. And I've said production is important, and we know that. But if you're going to get somebody in, you've got to have a set that is robust and flexible that gives a different feel every time you go into an event.
Yeah, no, agreed.
And that's where the money comes in. I think TN, I was going to say TSC. I think TNA need a couple of top tier talent. I think they need a couple of signings.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think CM Punk is the right signing for them. I don't necessarily think Will Ospreay is the right signing for them. And
all
the only
for
reason and the only reason and that's for Will. Yeah. Because I think Will's going to cost too much. We know he's gone to Barry Bloomstein now, who is Barry Bloom, who is the rep for most of the major stars within WWE and AEW. He's going to go for a six-figure deal. Part of me does sit there thinking, going, you bring the big stars in on a one-off Legends storyline, as and when you
hmm
need them, but TNA should be about what TNA did back in 2005, where TNA took a load of unknown talent from NWA Wildside, from local indie promotions across North America, from some of those
yeah,
guys in WCW that never got the rub, AJ Styles, and they focused on those younger talent and elevated them into superstars. So effectively, with a development system without being a development system, but you invest in that talent and you bring some of the big names in to give them a rub, and you go. But you let WWE and AEW and New Japan pay the big money. You focus on the talent that you've got and homegrown them. And we've already seen that with Josh Alexander. We've already seen that with Deanna Perrazzo. We've already seen that with Steve Macklin. To a degree, we've already seen that with PCO, who did make a name for himself in Ring of Honor, but has gone to new heights within Impact Wrestling or TNA, right? You could contact someone like OVW and sign some of those OVW talents and bring them in that were on the wrestlers and give them a rub and elevate them up and give them a national platform. And if they move on, okay, you've lost the talent, but you have got that back catalogue of footage, right? And if they
Mhm.
don't, like someone like Moose, who has signed a long term deal with TNA or PCO, they're yours, your homegrown talent. You have developed them. That's your legacy. And that's what TNA did back in 2005.
And this is the thing that going back to a comment we both said at the start of the show about the
Yeah.
homegrownness and the fact that they build themselves up, and it's a proving ground.
Yeah.
I really, really, really hope that that feel never goes. I hope that when it goes to TNA wrestling or back to TNA wrestling, however the terminology you want to call it, I hope that it doesn't lose that. The fact that it's where people want to go to prove themselves, to make themselves. Because you look at also someone like Nick Aldis.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was
Yeah.
he had at one point, and then he went away, and he came back again. He is now the general manager of SmackDown, and his mic skills are so good at that, and his on-screen
Yeah.
presence is because of TNA or Impact, whatever you want to call it.
It's
And that,
partly it's partly because of that. It's partly because he's a natural talent. I hope that the business model that Demore and the TNA management team do is similar to that of 2005, and by that I mean you have the clear divisions, you have the focus on the X division, and you take the X division back to what it was, right? Because that was, Jarrett said this a number of times. The X division was that unique selling point of TNA back in 2005 was Eli Skipper, it was Frankie Kazarian, it was AJ Styles, it was Christopher Daniels, it was No Limits. That was the unique selling point of TNA. That's what made TNA the alternative. And really, there's enough guys out there now that you could build and generate that X division into being industry leading cruiserweight action, because you don't see cruiserweights in their own
that,
division anymore.
and that's what also it would be that unique selling point, that USP that we always do when
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we've both been salesmen, we're both still salesmen. Um, like the
I
fact
wasn't very
is,
good at sales.
you were. You sold the show to me.
Okay.
I fell in love with it. But the thing for me is the factor of my view is with the using the X division especially is the factor of when you've got people like um, Blake Christian, like he is a proof that he was in the Cruiserweight Classic for
Yeah,
WWE. He then joined WWE, then he was released. He then came there. He did a short time in TNA or Impact, whatever you want to call it. He then now is one of the most signed people in
yeah,
the indie scene. Or the factor of they just signed Liam Slater, 19 years old, their youngest signing in history. That guy is
yeah.
class. Guys,
And that
if you
and
haven't seen him before, wait till he comes into the Impact into TNA. You are going to see something else. He's amazing. No wonder why they signed him.
and
And
that
it's the
and that
thing.
and that might be a sign of things to come. And I think if you look at what they did back in the X division with the World X Cup and
Yeah,
Ultimate X and all that type of thing, to me, that's my hope for TNA, is that they go back. And you talk about these pillars in AEW, right? And I don't mean pillars of superstars, I mean pillars of division. You focus on the heavyweight division, you give that some character, which is it's always had, but it's not the main focus. The women get equal focus, the X division gets equal focus, and the tag division gets equal focus. Those four pillars of any organization are what your what your fans want to come and watch. And with TNA, they always did the X division well. And in fairness, they always did the knockouts division well. There were some of the best matches in women's wrestling took place in TNA. Um, and you got to think Scott Demore was there from the beginning, so he knows what the Jarrett model. Um, you don't want to carbon copy it. I get that, and I like the fact they're not going to, but don't forget who you were and look at your competition and go, what is going to make us unique? What is going to change us out from All Elite? What is going to change us out from WWE? We don't have the budget, we don't have the money, but we have this, and go with it. And I think by doing that, we'll look back on this in the first 6 months of 2024 and go, Jesus, TNA has worked, and the X division is the star of the show, or this is the star of the show, and it's clearly outperforming WWE and AEW in those aspects.
Yeah,
And it will
definitely.
be interesting this time next year, as we do wrap up for 2024, to go, actually, who is the number one company in professional wrestling? Who is the number two? Who is the number three? And where does TNA and where does the NWA and where does Ring of Honor sit? Because I guarantee you it won't be the same as what it is on November 3rd in 2023. It won't be the same in 2024.
And then next year when we do our episode, which will be the State of Wrestling address, like we did this year, I can't wait to sit there and go. I wonder what I think now and think to myself. I wonder what we'll be talking about on that show because there's a thing going around on social media about things that have happened this year, and it's a whole that wasn't on my 2023 bingo card. And if someone said at the start of the year that Impact was going to go back to being TNA, that wasn't on my bingo card.
Mm,
Like even having LA Knight versus Roman Reigns in Crown Jewels wasn't on my bingo card. It's those things that we look now and go, or Ric Flair for the fourth time on this show, but Ric Flair being in AEW. That's what I love about shows like this. The fact that we look and go, how is that like what? How has that happened? And it's
mm,
what I love. And the one thing I like just before we like finish up is the fact of it's the unknown. Are we going to see things come back like King of the Mountain, the Bound for Glory series? Are we going to see the X Division match where it's the Ultimate X like monthly? Are we going to see
mm,
these things? Who knows? And that's what the fun bit is because we're going to sit
mm.
here come end of January, beginning of February, going, wow,
Yeah,
they've brought everything
exactly.
back. Or they've not brought anything back and it's completely brand new. They've brought in a brand new match. Who
Exactly.
knows? All I know is I can't wait to like watch that. But on top of all that, I can't wait to hear what you fans want to say about it. Because please leave your comments because I really want to hear what you guys have said. Because we just talked for near on an hour talking about this talking point. Tell us what you think, guys, and remember to find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and X at no, not that TSC Wrestling Pod.
Oh dear.
Uh, also find us on YouTube and on Spotify because we want to hear from you guys, and that's why. And I would say that because we really want to hear from you guys and our email address. Like, please just contact us because we would love to be able to read those on the show. You can tell I've had many numbers this morning.
You can. It's either that or the paint fumes. One of the two. That's it for us for this week. Thanks for joining us. An interesting topic. I wasn't expecting it to go quite as long as what it did. But I hope. What do you think? As Sam said, let us know in the comments on YouTube and across social media, and also leave us a review on iTunes. The 5-star reviews that you can give us really do help us move up those rankings, and allows us also to now bring you guests based on that feedback. Because the first thing people look at is where are you sat on the charts. So the more you can help us do that, the better we can bring you guests and various different things. But we will be back next week with more TSE. Standard format will return next week, although I do quite like just doing these talking points sometimes because they're makes us different. And on that, if you've got any suggestions about what you would like to see on this show, are you tired of the news? Are you tired of challenge? Are you tired of wrestling history? Do you want us to focus on the old school stuff? Do you want us to do talking points purely? Let us know, and we will listen to what you want. Sam, amazing. Good luck next week in the new job.
Thank you
I
very
hope
much.
it goes well. Enjoy the painting. Plenty more to do here at my house if you want to come and do it. Until next week, guys, we will see you at the matches. Until then, so long, farewell. Take care. See you soon.